No Game, No Life, Volume 6, Chapter 1, Part 3. 3 minus 1 equals hopeless.
What do you mean, not in vain? You damn hypocrite!
He slammed his fist against the table, excoriating himself. A current world map, the position of the camps, the strategy of the Jors. Sure, it was great. A big find. It might even decide the fate of the village. They now had an idea of where the resources and bases were. They'd be able to avoid stepping onto the battlefield between the other races blindly. 5 years of risky expeditions spent just in the hopes of a find like this, starting by mapping their immediate surroundings, then a rough sketch of the world, updating it over and over to reflect danger zones and potential resources. It had only been recently that the thing that had finally become useful. Now, incorporating the information they had brought home today, the reliability of their maps would be dramatically improved. But how many people had died for those maps? Of course, Riku knew the answer to that question. He remembered all their faces. He could even recite their names. If you really wanted to know, he could tell you when they died, where, and for what. 47 people. No, now there was one more, so 48. Riku had given each of them the same order. Die. Some directly, some indirectly. But regardless of who delivered the actual command, Riku had been the one pulling the strings. One for all. Sacrifice one to save two. If it endangers others, throw away your life before that happens. The one who'd set down these rules, shown everyone the way to clamber up, just a rung, from their desperate situation, had been none other than Riku himself. But if we keep on like this, where does it lead? Kill one for two. Kill two for four. Stacked up, on and on, there were 48. And the current population of the village that had survived by virtue of these sacrifices was less than 2,000.
So, Riku, let's see what you have to say. How far are you planning to take this? Until that day you know will come when you kill 99 for 1001? Or until there's only one left?
Ha, 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 ha.
And you have the gall to tell a girl who's lost her father it's a victory for humankind with that mouth? Fooling everyone into believing that this is all inevitable, that these sacrifices are necessary, dragging them all down. And even you cling to those lies, locking away your heart and telling yourself what to believe.
It made him want to vomit. The self-hatred on the verge of frenzy scorched his throat.
Have you no shame? Or have you forgotten it? Just how low do you have to go? You damn...
Before he knew it, the table was broken. Sharp splinters of wood lodged in the fist he'd used to smash it, blood spilling down. The blood that had rushed to his head immediately subsided. His sober thoughts chided his heart.
Are you happy now?
Yeah, as if he'd be happy.
Are you going to cry?
Yeah, if that would help.
Then are you done?
Yeah, I'm done, asshole. He had no right to cry. If he was going to spill something, it should be blood. That would suit him better. The bastard, the son of a bitch, the phony fraud. Rather than a noble substance like tears, having his hands sullied with blood suited him better. He closed his eyes, put his hand to his chest, and imagined it. Ugh. With a heavy reverberation, he closed his lock. And that was that. The usual, expected, deceptive, calculating and calm, reliably encouraging. Riku, the steel-hearted adult, was whole again. Having closed his heart and cooled his head, Riku slowly opened his eyes, and then, at the sight of the mess before him, the shattered, blood-splattered table, he sighed. Trees won't grow from stone. Ah, shit. What do I do now? Picking the splinters out of his hand, he grumbled. There was no pain, as if his senses had frozen along with his heart. I guess there's no excuse I can make. No, wait. If I use it as firewood, that would eliminate the evidence and add to our resources. 2 birds with 1 stone. I can eat on the floor, just fine. Outside the door, her back to the wall, Couron, face down, had heard everything. As usual, this had been why she'd left him alone. It was his time to collect his heart, so it could accept that he'd sacrificed, killed Ivan. His necessary ritual. Her brother needed this. Without it, he'd break down. Or maybe he was already long broken. But Couron didn't say anything. She could only do this, listen outside the door. To the boy of 18, so young he should have been considered a child. This situation, in which he was entrusted with the face and decision-making for a village of 2,000, was abnormal no matter how you looked at it. But there was no one else. To lead the defeated 2,000, to make the hard choices required. Who else could take on the resolve of those who'd come before, the wants of those remaining, and still move forward? Who could turn his heart to steel this way? No one in this world but Riku. If they lost him, they'd be reduced to quivering in fear of inevitable death as prey. Truly worthless, meaningless animals. Even Couron knew this. A great war that raged for eternity. This was no figure of speech. No one remembered when the war had started. Whenever humans established something resembling civilization, it had been erased as though clearing weeds. A pathetic oral tradition, absurd to even call history. They simply, calmly, factually described it as an eternity. A world where the sky was closed off and the earth torn asunder, bathed the color of blood, devoid of night or day. No longer having even a common calendar, they had forgotten what it meant for time to pass. The ages had come to a standstill as the earth and sky, drenched in the ashes of death, were scorched by still more violence, and humans remained powerless. To take a step out of the village was to extend one's neck for the Grim Reaper's sickle. Even an unlucky encounter with a wild animal invited death. The sight of the gods or the relations, the other races, spelled destruction. As little as a stray projectile or the wake of a blast meant annihilated villages, cities, entire civilizations. It didn't end. 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 The cycle of death and devastation.
If hell exists, this is it,
thought Couron. Yet still people lived. For they could not die without a reason. For their hearts would not permit their existence to have been in vain. Staying sane in a world like this, could you even call it sanity? 5 years earlier, the village that had taken in Riku, Couron's home, had been caught between the Flugel and the Dragonians, and erased. The adults who had been their leaders had died, and, crushed by despair, weeping and sobbing, the survivors had arrived at a cave. Ignoring those overcome with grief, a child then 13 scouted out the cave and declared it
This is a good spot. This could be our next village.
Before people who had lost everything mere hours before, he said,
Next.
as if it was obvious, a roar of anger.
What's the point?
They cried.
As so far as they're concerned, it's as if we don't even exist,
they wailed. To these arguments, too logical to sound like hysterical despair, the boy countered without batting an eye.
That's right. It's not as if we don't exist. We wouldn't exist.
And the boy explained how they'd go about it.
We do not exist. We must not exist. And so we shall be imperceptible. We shall be ghosts.
A black gaze, deeper than the darkness of the cave.
We shall use any means at our disposal to run, to hide, to survive, until someday someone sees the end of the war.
If they couldn't do anything, they might as well carry the hopes of those who had come before them. If they couldn't do anything, they might as well give those who came after them a chance.
Asciante, those who can say this and follow through. Follow me.
13 years old. The words of the child whose home had been meaninglessly destroyed twice resounded through the cave all too heavily. To those with eyes like ghosts, whose lives held no meaning, his words imparted a reason to live and gave meaning to death. It had been 5 years since, at the age of 13, Riku had assumed headship of a village with a population in excess of 1,000. Those who had died in the intervening years totaled 48. Couron thought,
that was inevitably few.
But Riku didn't see that. Even if he did, the responsibility of ordering their deaths crushed him. The 48 casualties had all lost their lives on expeditions. In a village swelled to 2,000, it would have been normal for twice that number to die in a single year, just as a consequence of food shortages. And if another race had discovered them, hundreds, thousands would have died in the blink of an eye. Having kept the casualties to 48 in 5 years spoke to Riku's competence beyond question. And that was why they trusted him. And that was why they'd put their lives on his shoulders. But sometimes they forgot. And every time they remembered, they felt guilty, offering thanks and apologies. Martha's earlier words had been an acknowledgement, too, that the Grim Reaper's sickle hovered over Riku's bare neck, same as the rest of them. But his neck hung with the weight of all 2,000 of them. When Riku emerged from his room, Couron tried her best to pretend she didn't notice his injured fist.
Riku, you're amazing. You're doing all you can. Your sister promises you. Stop trying to make me feel better. I'll go take a bath.
Riku's eyes were still lightless. Unable to bear it, Couron hugged him. This was the limit. Being the beacon that tethered the sanity of 2,000 people in this world was impossible. At this rate, her brother, Riku, wasn't going to last.
Hey, Couron? I keep telling you, it's Couron. What is it? When is it going to end? This age?
Someone had told him, foul weather gives way to fair. Every night gives way to light. But had any human seen the last time the storm of blue ash settled? Who had seen past the sky, obscured by dust, to the sun? Yes, some day it would end. It couldn't be eternal. But, by human reckoning, it was impossible to perceive this war as anything but eternal. So they asked themselves, when, hey, what? What's wrong? Ted, who'd been narrating through distant eyes as he played, now cried out in panic.
You bastard, please. You're telling this terrible story. To make me cry so I won't win, please.
Sorry. Maybe it was a bit too heavy. But while Ted apologized to Azuna, her plump tears falling one after the other, it occurred to him. The empathy to weep openly upon hearing this tale. Something had to be said for it. In point of fact, were he to relate this story to other races, the most he could hope for was to be dismissed as an "of course." Even now, over 6,000 years later, all the races still despised one another. A girl who could grieve for this and call it terrible was a child in the truest sense. Sorry, but it's a true story. This is how the world was during the Great War.
That asshole Ivan died, please.
Yeah, he died. Humanity, without the 10 Covenants, could die at the flick of a demonia. No. Lowering his tone slightly, Ted continued. Even at a single bite from a werebeast, they are the weakest creatures on this planet.
I would never do that,
she'd been about to say, but Ted was impressed that she didn't in the end. No, she couldn't say for sure that she wouldn't. This girl was honest and clever. Was it so different from what she'd done to Elkia in games? She saw this, and she felt, correctly, that it was absurd, that it was wrong.
That's wrong, please. It's total bullshit, please.
Yes, just as you say. The world was nuts. Truly, correctly, properly, absurdly unreasonable it was. If the feelings of a child could accept that as only natural, that was what would be abhorrent. But hey, no one likes a story that's too heavy, right? Why don't we skip ahead? Trying to pep up the oppressive atmosphere, Tet wiped away Azuna's tears. Have you heard of Ex Machina?
Exceeds rank 10. Ex Machina, please. Don't treat me like a dipshit, please.
You sure are smart. Studying hard, I see. Good girl, good girl. Petting Azuna as she took a big snort, Tet deftly continued playing as he talked. That's right, Ex Machina. A race of living machines. A race that is itself a machine. Created by old Deus, inactive since long ago. An old Deus so ancient as to be forgotten, even by the Ex Machinas themselves.
Grampy told me about them, please. He said they'd never fall for the same attack or strategy twice. So during the war, the only ones capable of decide were the Flugel and Ex Machina, please. So... Right, this is what he said.
Izuna continued.
Don't mess with those crazy sons of bitches, please.
You get a perfect flower, Mark. Let me pet you some more. Tet plastered a grin across his face and went fluff, 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 fluff. So right, Ex Machina, one day, Riku ran into one of them. Yoink. Izuna jumped up like a cat, distancing herself from Tet in an instant. Yeah, so that boy Riku, face to face with the terrible Ex Machina, was suddenly attacked. At a speed too fast to react with humanity senses, you understand?
I thought you said you weren't going on with that terrible shit, please.
What? I just said no one likes stories that are too heavy, so I'd skip ahead.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you, please.
You can cover your ears if you want, but it won't work. The Ex Machina shot Riku with Lawa Poruken. It's a weapon designed to reproduce an elfin spell that fires countless vacuum blades that rip apart everything. Huh? The black ash itself was blown away as even the boy Riku's cloak and tools were minced to bits and sent flying through the air. Ah! Ah! I can't hear you, please! I can't hear you, please! And then she approached the carved up remains of Riku lying on the ground. And then she kissed him, saying, "Big brother, I can't take it anymore. Make me a woman." Didn't you say he was chopped up to goddamn pieces, please? Huh? All I said was his cloak and tools were minced to shreds, right? Riku was fine. Izuna, for the first time in her life, felt the urge to punch someone. Just finished up editing Chapter 1, or the end of Chapter 1 of No Game No Life Volume 6, and I'm kind of glad at where this is going. I've gotten a little bored of how Volume 4 and Volume 5, well, after the anime ended, how it just kind of like slowed down, and I didn't like the races and how it went into them as much as in the earlier chapters or where the anime was. And I felt like the twists were the twists were really good. What am I saying? That's one of the reasons I really wanted to read this, because I love the big brain plays. But I will admit, I wasn't as invested with the vampires and the mermaids. I kind of felt they just kind of weak. But man, I'm all for this backstory stuff. Like, it's just, I love the darkness of it. I love the world building of it, and I'm looking forward to this. I don't know if it's gonna be the whole book or not. I hope they don't overdo it, but I hope they don't underdo it either. You know what I mean? I hope we get to see more of what Theo and Clammy are doing, because those are some of the parts that I actually found pretty interesting in 4 and 5. And I'd be surprised if we don't get at least a little bit of an update. I'm really hoping for one. I think with that little note, I'm gonna leave you off on this. I'll see you next week for Chapter 2. And thank you guys for watching. I suppose I'll see you guys next time. Bye.